doing?
Right, hello. Right, now I must confess we've gone late because we've literally been chit-chatting about rethinking without going live, without me pressing the live button. So maybe
I think that's just as well, Eleanor, to be honest.
Although, this is where magic is, isn't it? When you just start chatting and like, exploring something, and not off camera is where the magic often happens. So
that is true. That is true.
I mean, we didn't manage to solve world peace in our 5 minutes chat. But
we didn't, but we did touch on it, having never met.
We're very close to a solution, I think. Oh dear. Anyway.
See, that's why they should put the women in charge. Sorry if there's anybody listening who isn't a woman, but
Come on, this is nonsense. Come on. Yeah, I know.
So straightforward.
Oh my goodness. Right. Okay. So back in the room, rethink, and today we're going to be exploring listening, which sounds, again, it's another one. This is why I love these topics. They sound so obvious and you kind of go, yeah, okay, we all need to listen. Yeah, I get it. But I was thinking about this, as I do. I think about my topics of the night before, and I was thinking, oh my God, we're so bad at this. So bad at listening. And at the moment, and I'm going to really listen to what you've got to say, and I'd love to know more about your thoughts on it. But I actually think we're getting worse, not better, because we seem to be now becoming all consumed about ourselves and what we want to project and what we want to say. And sometimes I just think, well, who's listening? Who's listening to all these people with all these things to say? So I'm definitely in this space of really trying not to keep saying stuff, but do more listening. This is one of the things that I want to do on here. But anyway, this is where my thoughts went last night when I was like, oh God, I'm really looking forward to this chat. But before we get into it, I'm dived in already. But maybe we should.
Well, and I wanted to dive right back. So
like, hey, tell us who you are.
Well, I am someone who works at listening every day. I will say who I am in a minute, actually, Eleanor, but I want to respond to what you were just saying, because only yesterday I was working with a group in London, and I was saying that when I started my work in organizations, which I'll tell you a bit about in a second, but everybody wanted to focus on having presence and making an impact. And it was all about, how do you walk into a room and actually smash that straight away? And I think, we are all, everyone's taken that on, Billy, big time. But actually, what I notice now in someone who has great presence is someone who will kind of lean out and watch and study and be still and silent and listen, so that they can really connect and find out. So that there's, I don't know how long it'll be before everyone catches up to that, but that to me seems to have immense power at the moment. So I just wanted to respond to that. But I'm Janie. I am a coach and facilitator and author, and I've spent the last 22 years now working in organizations with leaders on their communication. So historically, that has been about projection. And I started out my life as a classical theatre actress. So I trained at RADA, and, I have a whole bunch of skills that are related to communication. But actually, actor training is very much 50-50. It's, yes, of course, you need the voice, the body, the intellectual insight into character, the feeling, all of that stuff. But you also need to be an amazing listener, because otherwise you're just saying the words. So I think without realizing it, I think that skill became developed in me. But actually, it's only really in the last, I volunteered for the Samaritans as a listener. I've been doing it for 5 years. And actually, I didn't start doing it until I was 50. And I suddenly realized that 50 was the first time anyone had actually taught me how to listen. And then that got me thinking, a bit like you, I suspect we take a very similar approach. I just think, well, when my kids were little, I didn't teach them how to listen. I just told them to listen, listen, shut up, listen to me. And I realized actually that's our common experience. There's an expectation that we will get it, because we've got 2 ears, and we can, if it's available to us, we can hear what's being said, and so therefore we can listen. And actually, I think that's a bit like running. I can make my legs go fast, but it doesn't make me a runner. Do you know what I mean? It's automatic. I just do it automatically. So I think in terms of what really appealed to me about your whole piece around Rethink is, I think we need to really give some time to thinking about how we do that, because it is hard, man. I mean, it is really hard. I was on a Samaritans shift this morning from 7 till 11, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I know the conversations are big, but the focus and the dedication and the discipline to try and stay present is exhausting.
Yeah. Wow. Look, see, I'm really trying to listen now, but my brain,
no, bless you.
But I'm now bringing things in from what you said just then. I'm like, oh, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
But that's one of the things, isn't it? When we're in a conversation with someone, are we listening to wait for our turn? Like, oh, I want to say this. And, thinking back in my corporate career, that's probably what I used to, like early careers, that's probably what you thought you needed to do, because you, like what you said, you needed to be the biggest, the loudest, have the wisest words, all the rest of it. And then as you move through your career, you get a bit more confident in, well, no, I actually want to hear what people have got to say, because actually I just want the best solution, and I kind of need other people to be doing stuff. So it's part of delegation, part of co-creation, different role, I guess. But you still do it. Like now I was listening, but I was thinking, oh, I want to ask that. And then already I've missed what you said next. Well, I didn't, but that's what. So it's really fascinating around listening. So this piece about the Samaritan piece, that's really interesting, because that's in its purest sense, isn't it? I mean, that's what you're there to do.
Absolutely. And that, one of my sort of theses, in fact, my book is called The Listening Shift, because actually the thing that you can do as a Samaritan, and actually I realized the thing I could do as an actor, is there's a sort of finite period. Even if you're playing Hamlet, you're doing it for 3 hours, that's it. It's not that you're not listening outside of that, but I think the intention is really positive. For most people, we would like to be better listeners because we know what the value of it is. But somehow that gets washed into, from the minute I wake up in the morning to the minute I go to bed at night, I'm supposed to be a better listener. Personally, I think that's impossible. So, for example, at Samaritans, we couldn't do a back-to-back shift. That's not allowed because it is too hard to focus our energy and presence on somebody for too long. And I think in organizations, you have to think about, a bit like being a footballer or any kind of elite sports person, you have to periodize, you have to work out when you're going to ramp your attention up, and when you can just not zone out, but when you can sort of relax into a conversation a bit more and not have to work with such intensity. Because I think what you said has really hit the nail on the head. We listen, I believe, with positive intent, because we want to help, we want to solve, we want to be the person that says it's something that's really valuable and important. But that does mean that we're just waiting to say something, which you kind of have to roll back from. So there's two things there. Number one is try to be disciplined about, is this a ramp up or a bit of a relax, and also just be aware that I mean, one of the things that as a Samaritan, for example, is we don't give advice. So you might be sitting on your hands thinking, oh my God, why don't you just do X, Y, Z? But there's a great relief in going, actually, I can't do that. So I've learned not to listen to solve, which I think has been really liberating, because I work with people all the time who just bursting to go, you know what you should do, which I think mostly people don't want to hear.
Oh, 100%. Well, I mean, and that's the art of coaching, and the difference, isn't it, between mentoring and what you're doing is holding that space for people and really understanding that help isn't advice. Listening is listening, it's holding space, and
yes,
that moment that you get that, you realize like, oh my God, I've just been going around like sharing my views on the world, where actually that's not what anybody wanted.
No. And the other thing, of course, that I was surprised to discover is the kind of processing challenge. So you and I, educated women speaking at about 150, 160 words per minute, but processing at 4 times that speed. So there are always massive gaps for us to think, what I should have for supper, or, all of that stuff that kind of flows in. I wonder if she washed her hair this morning. So I think we should, I don't want to say let ourselves off the hook, but I think we have to be aware that there is a mechanical, physiological, however we're supposed to describe it, there is that challenge of, with the best intention in the world, space is going to be created, and what are we going to do with that space? So of course in coaching, and I think that's a real rethink for me, rethinking coaching, because I know I've worked with a lot of leaders whose aspiration is to coach, but actually they're not natural coaches, they're natural leaders, and they want to solve stuff.
Yeah, huge difference.
So
yeah,
they ask open questions like, what would it be like if you did what I think you should do?
Yes.
And yes, let's explore the idea of you doing my strategy instead of your own. So I think it is. The trouble is, honestly, Eleanor, it's just not sexy. It's just not. I've started to observe that, certainly when I walk into organizations to work with groups of people on their communication, I feel the pressure to produce a rabbit from a hat. Ta-da! If you do this, you will be Barack Obama. There you go. And the truth is, it's slog. It's like going to the gym, and that's boring for people. It's like, oh God, I'm doing it already. There's nothing new.
I guess the other thing there, when you just said that, the word that came to mind as well, it's a little bit about maybe not confidence, but being very assured of yourself, that you don't have to say something, do something. You're fine. Like what we talked about in early careers, and you see it on The Apprentice and all this. They feel like the loudest, the jazz handest, the the biggest. Whereas when you feel a little bit more comfortable or confident in what you're doing, and you look around, you realize that I haven't got anything to prove. I'm really just not. I really am genuinely just interested in others, because I'm not here to prove anything. That's quite a big thing in terms of permission, I guess, to listen.
Yeah, and I must say, this is one of the massivest jazz handist, I love that phrase, I'm going to use it, joys of getting older, actually, is really that need to prove does drop away. So, I'm aware that I am speaking from a place of, you know what, don't worry about it. Which, so I said to somebody a few years back, your confidence goes north, but your body goes south. But that's okay, because somewhere in the middle, there's a kind of sweet spot of this. And I can see there's a huge pressure. The urgency to prove ourselves does come from output, and organizations value output, right? They want, if you say something significant, if you're doing something, you look like you're earning your salary, and I think we've got to rethink that, because, and I'd sort of hoped that post-pandemic that might shift a little bit, because, as people gather back together in the workplace, I think that'd be great if that can be about conversations and connections and relationship building. But I don't know.
It's that gap that you were talking about. It's sort of, we've gone through this kind of moment in time where we all had a bit of a rethink, or maybe got so far, and then it's the gap, and suddenly we just fill it with actually, let's just go back to norm, because that's comfortable and that's fine.
Yes.
That's the gap that you're talking about. You fill it, and the easiest thing to fill it with is something you kind of know, it's already known to you, I guess.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head there, because we don't like gaps, most of us. I notice, I've learned as an actor and as a Samaritan and as a coach, and I've learned to be more comfortable with silence than I instinctively would be. If there's a space, I feel like I ought to fill it, because I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, including myself. And I think the real concern is that we are not comfortable with discomfort. We don't go, oh, this is uncomfortable, but actually it might produce something. We go, oh, I've got to fill that with what I know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's huge. So listening, I guess your sessions are as much about that silence as they are about noise. Like, actually, listening isn't about noise all the time.
No. And in my experience, I'd say 90% of the people that I meet are just not happy with silence. And actually, I think the advent of social media and the internet, and it's a big philosophical point, but I notice, my kids are in their 20s. They're not really comfortable with nothing, doing nothing, not having nothing, but doing nothing. They can't, I was on the tube yesterday a couple of times, and there are almost nobody who doesn't have a set of these in their ears, or they're on the phone, so there's a sort of gap filling constantly. Even I got to level 1500 on Candy Crush, because whilst I was on the tube, I'd be like, oh, I've got a couple of rounds of Candy Crush in, had to delete it because it stops me noticing, and as the actor in me goes, I'm always interested. I sit on the tube and I go, oh, I wonder what your story is, and I wonder. And if I'm here on my phone, I'm not using that space for anything kind of creative. So I think our gaps are reducing, which means our silences are, it's deeply uncomfortable. And I know one of my daughters for a long time couldn't go to sleep without something in her ears, music, audible stuff. And, I take that as a bit of a failing, really, because I just think, when did we lose our comfort with silence? Because actually it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That's, I love that. That's such a good challenge. And I'm thinking, I admit I'm very bad at that nothingness. Like, it's like sand, you build a hole in the sand.
Yeah.
It's not a hole for long, because the water comes in, just fills it up. It just comes. So if I do nothing, it tends to be, I'm creating something. Yeah. But I'm pretending I'm doing nothing.
And one of the points that I would just love to make is, we're losing the art, really, of listening to ourselves. Even I don't meet many people. I know there are people who are deeply into meditation, and I respect them, because I've never made it to that place myself. But I think just paying attention to ourselves is something that we don't really do. How am I feeling? How am I feeling physically? What's going on for me emotionally? What are the thoughts going through my mind? I don't know that we have much time doing that. Could do that on the tube, instead of which playing Candy Crush. There is a price to pay there.
That's a great challenge. And our programs certainly start with that, about checking in with yourself and ask yourself how you are and listen to yourself. And it takes a long time for someone who's not really done anything like that to go, what? And then you realize, and it goes deeper though, doesn't it? Then it gives you answers to so many of perhaps things you've been struggling with, because you didn't realize how much you were, maybe not sabotaging is maybe a strong word, but how much you were like, oh my God, I'm doing this, and that's what's happening, and I'm upset about it, but it's actually me creating it. And that's the listen to yourself, isn't it? Owning it a little bit.
Yeah. And that can be really uncomfortable. So I think, maybe we should have talked about this as rethinking comfort, because I just, I'm just never uncomfortable, really. And that's probably not, the agitation and disruption that comes from discomfort is, I don't know. I don't want everyone to feel like they've got to go and stand in a bikini outside in the hail just to go, now I'm going to listen to myself. But I suppose the principle is that these things are hard work and they are uncomfortable, and we're forgetting what that's like. We got benefits in other ways, but that's something that we probably need to go back to, but it doesn't feel like fun.
Yeah, that's the bit that you mentioned. You just said that before as well, and that stuck out. That was another thing that I was like, oh yes, and then it disappeared. The
Good listening.
Good listening, but disappeared. The fun, this is not fun bit. That's really interesting. So your work in organizations, as you say, you know, you get brought in because people want to be the loudest, the this, the that, that make more impact. And in a way, we're getting kind of pushed into that place. Like everything external is telling us that's what we need to be. Just show up, just create, just get on social media, just show up, blah, blah, blah. And then that's where we're kind of like recognizing, oh, this looks fun. This is where my energy is. This is where, okay, I must be holding myself back. I need something to get to that place. But as I said before, you also need to understand listening for it to be a whole, you know, it all works together. You cannot have one thing without the other. So what are you seeing when, say, if you were in a group of people like that, how does it work that you get people to that space of these two things work together?
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, I will talk about broadcast and receive. That seems, you know, we're all on broadcast, but actually my thesis really is we got to help people listen. So if you are if you're all about talking, if there are really important conversations that you want to have around inclusivity and equity and diversity and all that stuff, mental health, all of that stuff, that we really want to have those conversations, we cannot expect to talk at people, you know, hashtag be kind, you know, we're all kind of point the finger, do. So I'm trying to sort of shift the dial so that we're actually thinking about how can I help someone listen? Of course, a lot of that starts by, I'll start by listening to you, because if I listen to you and you've kind of got everything out, then you might be more available to listen to me. So it's a difference in perception from, you know, I'm going to talk at you and you're going to be very impressed and you're going to listen. And also I play a lot of games. I mean, one of the advantages of being an actor is that, you know, I've got a whole stack of stuff that is funny and enables people to laugh at and relax themselves. And then they're much more available to listen. They're much more willing to go, you know. And the other thing that I think I sort of have up my sleeve is that I know how hard it is, you know, and I am not one of life's natural listeners. I'm an only child. I'm an extrovert. I'm a performer. You know, I just really want to talk. So I've spent a long time learning to, and you know, it's the finest compliment of my life that someone said to me once that my kids both demonstrated the characteristics of people who were listened to. And to be honest, I could have died happy at that moment, because I thought that is really interesting. And what's really interesting, I mean, they can also be awful, but what's really interesting about both my girls is that they're not interested in celebrity. They're not on social media. They don't put themselves out there because they don't feel like they need to. And I think that's a really interesting, very tiny social experiment, because I suspect if you've been well heard, you don't feel the need to jump up and down and go, notice me, because you've been noticed. So I try and bring that into my workshops. I try to really deeply listen to people at the get-go. Make sure they feel I remember everybody's name. It doesn't matter how many people there are in the room, but I really remember everybody's name. I ask about them. I inquire. I'm interested, as you are, you know, curious. And then people relax because they're not fighting for attention. So I hope that combination of gently and with humor pointing out all our human failings makes them available to listen. I think that's, you know, it's hard in organizations because there's also time pressures, you know, not for me, but for people that work in organizations, you know, the intent can be there, but there just isn't the time really to listen to everybody in that way. Maybe, I don't know, I'm making it
but this is a good challenge. Let's explore that. That's the brilliant thing. I ain't got time to listen. You don't have time not to listen, though. That's what the point is. You know, what the point is, you know, what I'm hearing is that success, if we put it in that bowl, is as much about, you know, you want to get your message across, you want to achieve things. It's not just about broadcast. It's as much about how you're receiving it. In fact, to achieve things, you have to listen, because how can you create something that will connect with people? Everybody needs other people to achieve their goals in some way. Absolutely. And the only way you're going to do that is connect with people and listen, show true listening. So people, I would challenge you, you don't have time not to listen.
I agree. I totally agree. And also, I think what's really interesting is when you get to a certain level of leadership, you know, you tend to listen to the people that report into you, who are supposed to listen to the people that report into them, and so on and so on. But I just think, you know, I wrote an article for CEO Today or whatever a couple of months ago, and I was reminded of a story where I was working with the MD of a bank, well-known bank, and I arrived for a session at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm chatting to the receptionist, and she knew I was going to see the MD, and she said, "What's he like?" And I said, "What do you mean, what's he like?" And she said, "Well, I've never met him." And I'd like to tell you by lunchtime that day that was solved. But, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, that the MD of the bank had never taken the time to have a conversation with the frontline person, the person who meets key clients and suppliers, and, you know, is a really influential person actually in the business. And I can tell you, as an actor, I've done a lot of reception work, and it's, you know, you need to know what that person, what makes them tick. And I understand, you know, the MD, and quite rightly, he said to me, "You know what, I never even really thought about it, because I expect people to tell me how that is, but you've got to get out there and listen all the way through the organization." It's like, you know, I love it when I go to a restaurant and the chef comes out and goes, "How was your supper?" You know, because you can't rely on all the people in the middle going, "Yeah, I think they really enjoyed it." You've got to, you know, got to be able to sniff them.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. That's such a good way of describing it. You mean you do better work from it? I mean, it's got to be it's got to be part of doing better work.
Yes.
But then I guess you need to want to do better work, and maybe sometimes that's the thing. You know, people are just like, well, if I can just get through this as in my way, then I'll be fine. It's not about doing better or richer or deeper work. It's just about kind of surface work, which is different.
Getting stuff done, right? Yeah. And I do think as well, sometimes leaders don't listen because they're worried about what they're going to hear, or how they're going to feel when they hear it. You know, that's a big kind of, if you can have a sort of slightly polished version, then, you know, that's more palatable. But actually, you know, we should be careful about palatable, because I'm really worried at the moment all the ED&I stuff is going to become a kind of policy, rather than people actually having conversations where they're going to go, "Oh my God, ouch, I did not know that this was your experience."
Yeah, that's such a great challenge, because that you're right. You know, policies don't solve things.
No, they don't. They don't.
It's true connection, isn't it?
Yeah. But they make people feel good. They make people feel that they're doing something, which, you know, again, is a really positive intent. But we've got to be more grassroots than that, I think.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I was thinking as well around when you were saying that, around judgment of silence. If we can move into a place where we don't judge silence as a negative, and we respect it more, so we have a different relationship with silence. That could be interesting. So again, it's taking responsibility for yourself. To be listened to, but also to do the listening and respect that might be what someone's doing. So there's something there about what we were talking about, the, you know, it's the judgment of like, oh, they didn't say anything. Like
and there's a lot of storytelling then, isn't there? You know, in my head I'm thinking, they didn't say anything. Well, you know, they're probably not even interested in what I'm saying. So maybe they're thinking about something else, or I'll be thinking, oh my God, they're not saying anything. They think I'm a complete loony. You know what? So we do use, we make up a lot of stuff. I think it's a really good exercise actually to look at people in the media that we disagree with. You know, maybe some of our higher profile world leaders, let's say, at the moment, and think, what is my view of this person? And remember that if you were in front of them in conversation with them, that view of that person is going to inform how you listen and how you respond. And actually, can you flip it? Is there another way of going, what's the open question that I would ask? Or what's my curiosity? You know, how would I, on this day when we are in, you know, perilous circumstances with Vladimir Putin, for example, if I were in a room with Vladimir Putin, what question would I ask him that wouldn't tell him that I was really judging?
Wow. Yeah.
You know, that's, I think the aspiration is to get to this place where we are genuinely curious and want to understand, rather than just, as we were saying earlier, listening to go, well, you shouldn't have done what you did, and don't let me tell you off. We do a lot of telling off at the moment, don't we?
That's a great one. So you're sort of turning up with nothing, actually. You're not turning up. You try and turn up with nothing.
Trying to turn up with nothing.
Yeah, try, because you're right. You do turn up to a conversation or a meeting or whatever it is with a preconceived, like, oh, this is going to be awful. Oh, this person's this person's that, or they're going to have the interview. So you're always turning up with some baggage that then maybe blocks your listening. So you're actually filtering it through this baggage you've got, and you're kind of missing points, or the conversation is weighted. And I guess, you know what, you just made me think, that's what I get frustrated. Like I kind of want to listen to politics and get more involved. But that kind of debate just feels so pointless, because all they're doing is trying to get the last word. They're not listening or building on or going, oh, that's a good point. Okay, I never thought of it like that. It's just conflict, and it's dull, because it's just
really dull, isn't it? It's what my mum used to call now you, now me conversation. You know, just literally just, as soon as you finished, I'm going to say the thing that really needs to be said. And you know, I don't know how stressful those circumstances are, but I do remember when Keir Starmer became leader of the Labour Party, he said, you know, we have got to get back out there with people that we've lost, and we've got to listen to them, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but we've got to do it, which are, you know, very noble sentiment. I absolutely get it. And then there was a scenario where he was in Bath, actually not far away from me, and he went into a pub owned by a landlord who had been a Labour voter and had walked away from the Labour Party. And this voter threw Keir Starmer out of the pub. It was a nasty exchange. But instead of listening, as he stated he meant to, he got into fingers in his ears. Well, I don't agree with you. My wife, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. So it was a really nasty exchange. It must have been really uncomfortable for him and probably for both parties. But I thought this is a really interesting thing about listening, is that when we feel threatened, and that's a really extreme threat, but when we feel threatened, we get a surge of stress hormone that focuses us so sharply on what we think we need to pay attention to that we stop listening. So anybody that is here today and listening, you know, if you feel stressed or anxious or under pressure, got deadlines, you will not be available to listen well, because you will just be focusing in on that. I knew they'd say 9 o'clock. I knew they'd say it, you know, but we might have missed all the other stuff that they could have said around it that could have enabled us. So it's
That's interesting. Yeah, you've got to be in the right space to listen. Harry's just posted, any views on the difference between listening and just listening?
What a great thing. Whoa, yeah. Well, I'd be really interested in your definition, Harry. I mean, I think this is the shifts thing for me.
Yeah.
You know, just listening is the kind of, well, If someone's giving me directions, I'm just listening to, hang on a minute, say it again, turn right there. You know, there's no real depth. There's no real need for depth. But listening is like a, you know, really dedicated practice, a really focused, okay, I'm going to shut everything else down. I'm going to really, really tune in. So that's my interpretation of what you've asked, Harry, is that just listening is the sort of the top layer. And then the listening is the kind of, right now I need to be really in here. I can't watch my vibrating phone or my flashing watch or my, you know, pinging computer or any of that.
Yeah. It's what you said at the beginning, I think, around intention, you know, being more intentional about how you're showing up. What is my role today? Am I here to listen, take in, because I want to do better work? I want to understand things. And I guess, again, that's the bit we don't take a lot of time with, especially at work. You know, you just go into one meeting, you kind of muddle through, you sail out of it, and we blame the meeting. You go, oh, that was a rubbish meeting. Meetings. It's not the meeting. It's the intention. It's how it's set out. It's how somebody's facilitating it, bringing people in. You know, it's that, isn't it? It's being intentional with it, and then honouring your role. If you think, okay, I'm here to listen today, to understand, because I want to do better work, do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, I think we are less courageous than we could be in letting people know, you know, guys, I'm here, but I got to tell you that I've got X, Y, and Z on my mind. So I may need to seek clarification, or I may not participate fully. You know, I just think it would actually save time, because I hear all the time people say, well, I don't know why they didn't do it because I told them, which means we've assumed listening. They're in the meeting. We assume they're listening, but to Harry's point, they're probably just listening. They're not listening, you know, and I think we could be a bit braver about that.
I told them.
Yeah.
Or I get that all the time when I forget things all the time. I told you. Okay.
I know. I know. Isn't that shocking? Is it because, well, I mean, but if I roll back on the comment about my kids, you know, that I think of the number of times where they would be telling me, it's going to make me sound awful, but where they'd be telling me about their day, but I'd be cooking or doing something and being in the conversation. But that's just listening. That's not really, okay, let me sit down for 5 minutes and you tell me 100% about your day, and I am going to take it all in. So I do notice, and I think this is a big problem in organizations, is that, you know, we get a cascade. CEO does a presentation, here's the strategy, leadership going to cascade it through the organization, and then you go, well, it's done. But particularly now, you know, that cascade will be online and everyone will be like doing whilst they're listening, and then we wonder why things are not heard with any degree of consistency. People interpret stuff differently.
Yeah, that's a big one. I was doing a piece of work. I've been kind of working in this Rethink change piece. Exactly that.
Lovely.
Comms person by background. But the bit that, you know, always in internal comms is, you know, when change is going through and people aren't responding, or there's problems, or it's always the comms wasn't good enough. The comms needs to go back out. We need more comms. It's always that. And it's not, you know, I'm doing this kind of big piece of work that it's the missing piece of, you can do a beautiful piece of leadership comms. And then when I talk to people about listening, they go, yeah, we'll put listening sessions in. No, that's not what I mean either. But yeah, fine. That's not what I mean. And when it goes out, or when these kind of things happen, as you just said, that the great cascade, these people at the bottom catching it all, if that's change, they've got to go through the change process. They're going to go, okay, what's this? Okay, can I have a think about it? Can I process it? What does it mean for me? How am I feeling about this? You've got to go through all of those stages to get to the point where they go, oh, okay, right, I'm going to choose how I respond to this. And that some people are great at that and they can do it in a day. Others, that's going to take months, years. We don't give that space of, there's the listening layer and then there's the process layer, like you talked about at the very beginning, like how we're processing what we're hearing. That's the difference, isn't it? Listening is led. You've got to go, okay, what am I'm hearing, but now what do I do with it? How do I process it? How do I choose what to do with it? There's something that goes on behind that.
Yeah. And isn't that fascinating? Because actually, I think the frustration for people running the organization is, for God's sake, we've got to get on and do it. So we've told them, so they know, right? And actually, that's a really big piece of rethinking in terms of comms. You can't just add more onto the intranet. You really, especially now, I think people, I really believe, and I have nothing to back it up, but I really believe that kind of caring connection leadership is going to be the big currency going forward, because we just can't rely. There's so much information coming our way. There's so much stuff that, engagement is going to be, it feels like we need to go micro again. We've done all this kind of big stuff, but it feels like, I notice everyone's worried about changing the world, but actually not looking after their neighbors. And I think that's because neighbors is not sexy, right? They're just next door, but actually I want to, talk about water bottles in Indonesia, which, it's not that it's not important, but I think we're going to have to go back to this place where we can just be right here and hope that the ripple effect is positive. Very difficult.
Yeah, and you're right, and that does translate into organizations where you have to recognize, well, one, I think people have realized they got more choices, so actually the choice part of that element they're kind of more aware of than ever before. I don't have to do this, I don't have to do anything. So there's that piece of awareness that is definitely going on, and I work with organizations that they won't do it. They won't come back in the office. They won't do this. They won't do that. The leaders are getting stressed because no one will do what they're told anymore. It's like, the rebellion is on in some of these places. And then we can't get stuck. It's all of this stress, which is like, just give people more time and tools to understand where they're at. And it's not that everyone has to get their own way. Again, that's not listening. It's understanding, well, where's the middle part here where we achieve goals, but we're working in collaboration. And that's listening kind of connection.
And I think what we're talking about is not really compatible with the speed of the world.
Good point. Yeah. But then where are we speeding up to? Like, I was in a discussion a couple of weeks ago, a little bit out of my depth here, but I thought, what you said before, get uncomfortable. It was all about AI. I have no clue about that kind of world, but I'm like, okay, I need to get involved in some of this stuff. And they would say it, the guy that was kind of talking through was like, oh, we can do things faster, we can do this. And one of the guys talking was saying to him, why do we need to go faster? Like, who cares? Where are you speeding up to? Where is okay, make more money? Why do we want to make more money? We're just putting more people into poverty just for the few people to get richer with this speed to getting wealthy. That's what you're doing at every level. Anyone who's getting rich quick, somebody is getting poor quicker. And I was like, oh my God, this is blowing my mind.
Oh God, wow, really?
It's true. Like, what is this speed of an organization? This faster, better, quick? Why? What is wrong with just now being okay with now? Why does everything have to be fast? And it was, that was just blew my mind. You can imagine. I was like,
that's amazing. Actually, I remember at I think it was Gloucester Road tube station, they used to have inspirational quotes on the wall. And I remember one that really got me. I think it was Gandhi, said there's more to life than increasing its speed. You think, oh yeah, okay. It really made me think. And indeed, if you want to be a great listener, it's a proper slow burn. And for me, it's the most incredible act of generosity. And I, it's not all about Samaritans, but I can tell you that the number of times that people will so genuinely and warmly say at the end of a call how very much it has meant to them just to have the space to talk about what's going on for them, which, you know, but I find both wonderful and also sad, because you just think they don't have anyone that's prepared to do that for them in their home. Some of those conversations are not appropriate to have with the people that you know, but actually I think it's the most enormous gift to be able to just give someone that space and time, that otherwise it just everything run, and there isn't time. Which actually I think, you know, if anyone's thinking about, well, how can I do that, I think often you probably do this as a coach, but, you know, walking with someone is such a great way. Really, really listen, because there's something for me about, I mean, obviously I don't walk with my eyes closed, but, you know, because you're not facing somebody, there's something about that kind of side by side thing that makes us a bit more comfortable with silence, because you're sort of doing something at the same time. So it can be quite a good practice to think, how can I uncover a bit more of this comfort with space and silence in my conversations? Go out for a walk with someone, and notice how that feels, how giving yourself that space feels, and then
I think you would be a bit more naturally silent as well, like when you walk and talk. So, you know, you kind of say, look, you know, sometimes we're a little bit out of breath, actually. If you know, up in the fells, it's fine to be a bit silent for a while, and that's nice. You know?
I would need that. But yes, so exactly that. But it's a good way to begin to get comfortable with it, just to notice, because you're walking, or sometimes if there's music playing. I mean, music can affect mood, but if it helps, then there's something, so it doesn't feel like such an oppressive cloak hanging there over you know, over you both. That can be helpful, but that's definitely the practice. You know, it's just something slower, more rhythmic, bit more space, but you're also doing something, which you know, I can see as an advantage for those of us that struggle with it the most.
Oh, this is so good. Do you know what? We've talked for 45 minutes already.
Oh my God, have we? Wow.
That's amazing. But this is, I think we've gone in all sorts of different directions, and that's the point really of a rethink chat, because that is the point. One of the points is, like, actually just start talking and listening and see where topics go. So actually we kind of demonstrated the whole point of Rethink in itself, because that is, I think that's one of the things. Sometimes we're trying to look for things and miss stuff because we're trying too hard. So this, we've demonstrated it, is what I'm trying to say. And so many good nuggets there. I think the thing that stuck into my mind is that, you know, what you were talking about as an actor, that actually you need to be a great listener to be a great, well, actors are projectors, I guess, and entertain. You need to listen to get that connection that makes the brilliant actor. Like, yeah, of course you can go on and deliver your lines, of course you can, but unless you're listening, taking in, connecting with what else is around you, you're not going to give your full performance. That's stuck in my head, because that's such a good way of thinking about it. We're not here to deliver lines. So
no, that, I mean, I love that you just said that. That's a brilliant way of putting it, because actually I think great actors are great listeners. And if you watch your favorite actors on screen, the intensity with which they focus on whoever they're in a scene with, that's where the magic is. It's not in having a lovely flowery voice, or, you know, anyone can deliver lines. Anyone can deliver lines. With enough rehearsal, anyone can deliver lines. But the magic is in how you really receive them.
And that's what we should all work on, I think. Be more
actor. Be more actor. Obviously not me, because I had to give up.
Well, have you given up, though? I don't know if you have given up. I think you're just sharing it in a different way these days.
That's a lovely way of thinking about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I kind of wish that I was still living in Bristol and we could meet and go walking and listening. But anyway,
when I bring my van up to Cumbria, we will.
Oh, well, yes. I'm definitely all about that. I'm trying to get more walking. I've sort of put it off because the weather was awful, but I've got no more excuses now. It's kind of coming into spring, so I'm going to do more walking and saying to people, please, I'm being serious, like, if people come to Cumbria, let's go walking, because
you're on today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? I will put your website in the
I'm
notes.
at janievanhool.com and Janie at janievanhool.com.
The listening shift.
It's called the listening shift, yes, which is actually, it's a kind of communicator's toolkit, really. That it's not about broadcast, but it is mostly about receive, in terms of that's how it starts.
Cool. Right, I'll put the website on when we go. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And hopefully we can come across each other again. And
I hope so. I'm an avid follower of your posts on LinkedIn, so it's a joy to meet you finally, and I'll look forward to seeing you in person at some point in the coming months.
Oh, thank you, Janie. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
And you. Bye now. Bye.